Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. We're coming into the busiest time of the year for retailers as they gear up for Christmas and Boxing Day sales. But in recent years, we've seen November's Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales starting to outsell that Christmas period. It sounds great for plenty in business, but what if they're becoming overly reliant on Cyber Week for their annual sales? Paul Waddy is an e-commerce leader and strategic advisor to brands selling online. He's the founder of learnecommerce.com. He says it concerns him just how many online retailers are going through most of the year, making not too much profit, and then relying on that November-December period to pay all the bills. Paul, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Sean, thanks for having me.
Just give us the big picture first. Right now, as it stands, how important has Black Friday and Cyber Monday become? And then what's that Christmas period? How important is that?
Short answer is too important. So I think this Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Cyber period now seems to go for weeks, has come on the back of this US, typically US Thanksgiving sales. Aussies have jumped on board, no doubt. So November revenue in retail is now considerably bigger than December. So November is the biggest retail month of the year, which is unheard of a decade ago. It's always December.
It's happened so quickly.
It's happened so quickly. I mean, I didn't even know about this, 5 or 6 years ago, but we've embraced it. When I say we, I mean, both online shoppers and online retailers, and that's fine. My concern is just that it's sort of this holy grail, and it can be a bit of a false prophet. You're sort of waiting to make all your money in November. And obviously you're going on sale, so your margins are under pressure. My concern is that good business operations and business metrics have been largely forgotten for the rest of the year. So, I'm a bit worried about this over dependence on the period, and maybe I'm getting old, but I call it the most unexciting part of the retail calendar, because I think people are way too focused on this big discounting month, and we don't really love discounting, right? It hurts our margins.
Okay, so what about, how's it compared to that Christmas period and the Boxing Day sales and early January? That period must be bigger than. I agree that it's becoming weeks, not days, but that period is bigger, is it?
Yeah, look, I work with a lot of online retailers from anywhere from kind of $5 million a year to $200 million a year in revenue. I would say on average, November sales are at least 50% bigger than the month of December. So Even just with that week, which has become a fortnight, and it is a little bit sad, but Boxing Day sales, they're not real. I know, a bit of a novelty to go into stores, but on the online retail calendar, they're getting smaller and smaller because I think people are pretty much overspent in November. So there's no question these big November sales are pulling some of the revenue away from December and definitely January. January has become a really, really soft month in terms of particularly online retail, but it's just November is streets ahead of the rest at the moment.
Okay, so if I'm an online retailer and I do 10 million, 20 million turnover a year, so it's, I'm a decent size, and I am overly reliant on November 1st and then December, what would you recommend? How should I spread it out throughout the year?
Well, again, I just today was on a call with a retailer who's planning to do $4.5 million in revenue in November. And I was sort of like a little bit nervous because I know that they've lost money basically up until this point. It's quite a stressful moment because you're putting all your eggs in one basket. And my idea of good business, and it's why I am in business, is that owning a business should improve your life. I'm not sure that making profit in 1 month of the year is really improving your life. I actually think that is making your life stressful. So for me, I much prefer those good, stable businesses that you're pulling a profit from January through to December. So the advice that I would give to online retailers is any mug can make sales in November. If I throw up a 30% discount code to my customers, great, I'll make plenty of money, but that's really going to impact your bottom line. So you've got to remember to focus on your unit economics. It's not just about filling my bank account. You've got to remember you actually paid for that stock at some point. You've now discounted it and you're selling it. So I would much prefer that retailers think about good business practices from January through to December. Does that mean I think you shouldn't discount in November? No, but I think you should discount as part of your strategy to improve your balance sheet, to clear old stock, not as the primary strategy. Because any retailer, I think, with some exceptions, but any retailer that leads with a "I'm cheaper than everyone else" strategy is really playing a stressful game against some really big retailers. And I don't think we want to be in that price war really as retailers.
Stay with me, Paul. We'll be back in a minute. My guest today is Paul Waddy, e-commerce leader and strategic brand advisor. Okay, so I'm this fictitious retailer that I am, and I'm turning over however many $1 million a year. What's your advice then to get me into a pattern of selling in January and February and March and April? Are there just a few really basic rules around e-commerce that I need to follow?
Yeah, well, I've got a rule that I developed. It's called my 50-30-20 rule. And the reason that I built it was because so many people got into online retail from all different walks of life, including myself. No one really has a background in e-commerce. They don't teach it at school. They don't teach it at uni. So I found a lot of online retailers were exploding, like got to $10 million a year, and then and you would have seen it over the last year, collapse after collapse after collapse. And I created this rule called the 50-30-20 rule. So in online retail, and probably in, maybe to a lesser extent in bricks and mortar retail, you need a 50% gross margin at all times, minimum. Mm-hmm. You need to be focusing on spending 30% of your monthly revenue in your operating expenses. So you've got to stay under 30% of your revenue in running your business. And that leaves you with 50 minus 30 equals 20. That leaves you with a 20% net profit. And so that's a very basic framework that I think online retailers can stick to in their worst months. So you've got to be hitting those numbers in your quiet Januaries and so on. And if you're achieving that 50-30-20 rule in your quiet months, you're setting yourself up for massive success. So just do great things, have a great brand, great product, but stay in that 50% gross profit, 30% operating expenses. That'll give you that 20% net profit that you really need to improve your life as a business owner, I think.
How do you cut through all the noise in e-commerce? If I'm an operator, how do I get my message out there?
Never as hard as it is right now, Sean, because everybody's doing it. And people think it's as easy as throwing money at Facebook and Facebook ads and so on. And it's really not. I think there's actually an over-dependency on Facebook ads. It's seen as this kind of salvation that is getting harder and harder. I think that you need to aim for 50% of your revenue and your traffic to your site coming from organic sources. So by organic, I mean free. So way too many brands thinking about, Facebook ads, Google ads, SEO. You've got to think about your free channels more than your paid channels. So you think about the best brands that I work with, like your Budgie Smugglers, household name. They spend less than 10% of their revenue on ads. And people don't believe me when I say that because a lot of brands spending 20, 30% or more. But they don't have to because they've got such a great organic brand. And if you look at their social media, they're funny. One of their pillars is we're funny and we're cheeky. So you've got to lean into social media and find your pillar. Find what can you do, Sean, that's better than everybody else? And, for me, I say, well, I'm going to give out e-commerce advice, and people resonate and they follow that. Yeah. So you've got to find what you're really good at and use as many of the social channels as you can to grow an organic or free following. They will pay you back. And if you can find the people first and the product second, rather than saying, I've got a product and just flogging it off to as many people as possible, build the people, build the community, through your organic social media channels first, and then introduce the product, and the revenue comes later.
Just a final question, Paul. Where's e-commerce up to? Obviously, COVID was spectacularly good for e-commerce. It has come off the boil somewhat, but no one thinks it's ever going back to where it was. Will it just continue to grow and dominate retail spend more generally?
Well, look, so I wrote a book called Shopify for Dummies and Selling Online for Dummies. And last week, my book went number 1 in Amazon in the US. Last week.
Wow.
There has never been more interest. Yeah, it's a little bit harder than it was. Where are we at now? E-commerce is probably at about 20% of total retail. So, Sean, in my opinion, in 10 years, it'll be 50-50 with traditional retail. Now, how I can tell you that is I've got 3 daughters under the age of 5. They can use an iPad better than I can. So evolution, when I'm old and grey, although I'm already grey, but when we get older and we move on, it is inconceivable for me to think that the younger generation won't come through and be more digitally savvy than we are. Evolution tells me that, as weird as it sounds, we're still pioneers in e-commerce. You could start an online store this week and in 20 years have created a legacy brand and still be considered a pioneer. So it's bizarre to say it, Sean, but we're still in its absolute infancy. There's a long way to go in the scheme of things.
Paul, thank you for talking to Fear and Greed.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
That was Paul Waddy, e-commerce leader and strategic brand advisor. He's founder of the website learnecommerce.com. This is the Fear and Greed Business Interview. Join us every morning for the full episode of Fear and Greed, Australia's best business podcast. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.